Hey, Dr. Mike here. So if you want to live forever-ish, you have to know what's in and what's not. Stay tuned to find out.
You're listening to Live Foreverish, a show dedicated to helping you live just a little longer. Here's your hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Crystal Gossard.
All right, welcome to Live Foreverish. So this is our ins and outs of living foreverish. Long, strong,
healthy, vibrant.
We can see, that's good stuff, right? That's what we want. So let's get into the things you want to do. These are the ins, right? In number one, I find this very interesting, right? Because when I first saw this, I'm like, yeah, more espresso. But that's not really the whole story.
Right.
Number one in is caffeine, but we need to explain this a little bit, how they set this up, because it doesn't mean to drink necessarily more espresso shots, does it, Dr. Krista?
It does not. What these researchers wanted to investigate was the potential causal effect of long-term plasma concentrations on adiposity, type 2 diabetes, and major cardiovascular disease.
Right. And so they looked at something that we've talked about before with caffeine, right? We did a whole, was it the live show we did?
We did, yes.
We did a live show on this. Slow metabolizers, fast metabolizers, right?
Right.
And just real quick, it's not that hard to understand, right? It makes sense. Slow metabolizers, when they consume some caffeine, it simply lasts longer in their body.
That's right.
Fast metabolizers, it doesn't last as long. So what they were looking at was genetic markers of slow metabolizers, right?
Yeah.
And then they were looking at caffeine levels in those people, not from drinking, but just from how they metabolize it. Am I on the right path?
That's very true, because the people who are slow metabolizers drink less coffee or caffeinated beverages.
But they have more longer. Right.
Exactly.
And that's what they were looking at the end of the day.
That is what they were looking at. And I think it's important research, because often you see more observational studies when it comes to food components, caffeine, coffee, caffeinated beverages, and how they can impact diabetes. We know that people who drink 4 to 5 cups of coffee, they have better BMI, better cardiovascular health. But just kind of now seeing, is there more of a cause effect? And that's what the researchers used gene data.
That's really cool, right?
Yeah, I think it's really cool.
It's the next level of biomarker, genetic marker, basically.
Yes. Now, the participants were individuals of European ancestry. So I have to always say that.
All right.
But it doesn't mean it doesn't apply to everyone, because we can all evaluate these SNPs is what they call it, right?
Genetic SNPs that predict how you're going to metabolize caffeine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mentioned on our live show, Dr. Mike, that I've had my genes analyzed, and I am a slow metabolizer.
So this is your fault. You fall into this.
I fall into this, right?
Yeah.
So
well, let's get into. So the results are pretty straightforward here, right? Those that are slower at metabolizing naturally have higher amounts, and what they found was associated with lower body mass index and a lower risk of type 2 diabetes, right?
Yes, but they also found, just to clarify the type 2 diabetes, you said that correctly, but they clarified in the research approximately half of the effect of caffeine on type 2 diabetes was estimated to be through lowering the lower BMI.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So
it's just so well, and that makes sense too, right? So you lower BMI, that helps with sugar as well. Now, they're not ruling out that caffeine still didn't play a role in that, not just by BMI, but by affecting sugar itself, right? But they're just keep in mind that lower BMI, you tend to have better sugar control.
That's right.
Right. So again, does this mean I need to do more of my espresso shots in the morning? No, this is really looking at your genetics.
Yes.
And predicting from there, better metabolic health. That's
Absolutely.
really cool. So now for us for us fast metabolizers, well, maybe it does mean an extra shot here and there for me, so I have longer caffeine levels.
Yeah, maybe they need an extend release caffeine pill.
Well, they have those. We took them when I was in medical school, remember?
Extend release.
Well, I don't remember extend release or not.
That's kind of where I'm going. Like, how can we keep the caffeine concentration higher in the fast metabolizers?
All right, so that's caffeine for living foreverish. Number 2, that's in, again, this is something you want to do, you want to consume, etc., is walnuts. Now, this is another kind of, I guess it's a little complex how they set this up, right?
I think so.
Overall, they wanted to know the effect of walnuts on gut health and heart disease risk, right? Wasn't that's the main idea? But then tell us how they broke it out.
Yeah, so they added the walnuts into the diet. They added components from walnut or fats from walnut, ALA. It's an omega-3 from walnuts. And they also added a type of fat that's not from walnuts. So let me break it down how this happened, because it sounds very, very tricky. So they started off by assigning the participants to a 2-week standard Western diet, your normal diet, right. Normal composition of carbs, protein, fats. Then they took a bacteria sample from those individuals. After that, and that's kind of the baseline, afterwards they randomized each group to one of 3 diets and they crossed them over, meaning every one of the participants were able to experience
to do each one of these arms.
Each one of the diets. So for the first 6 weeks, whole walnuts, about a half cup to 3/4 cup of whole walnuts added to the diet. Then they took a bacteria sample.
Okay.
Then another 6 weeks, no walnuts. They added in ALA, which is a polyunsaturated fatty acid.
Found in walnuts.
Found in walnuts. Yeah. Then they took a bacteria sample. Third round, well, this is really 4th round if you count the first
just the
Western
first diet,
right?
Yeah.
4th round, 6 week of oleic acid.
Interesting.
Which is a type of fat that you find most abundant in olive oils. The most abundant fat in olive oil.
Considered healthy, right?
Considered healthy, right? And then the bacterial sample. And they analyzed the expression of gut microbes, genes, expression of gut microbes after the consumption. So they wanted to see, hey, what's happening with these fats or these walnuts or even the Western diet? What is happening to the gut microbes?
Yeah, and and we more and more we're seeing this kind of questioning about gut microbes because we're connecting them to better mental health, cardiovascular health, immune, right? Correct. That's why you see a lot of studies like this now looking specifically.
Yes.
How is food affecting my gut microbes?
That's right. And so they want to know, and they pulled out, I thought the ALA was a nice pull out because they wanted to know, is it maybe the omega-3s from the walnuts that's having this effect?
Would have been, right? I would have guessed that. I think, in my opinion, ALA probably wins here, right? But you're going to tell us the winner.
Well, I think that for me, it's no surprise. The walnut group.
They won. So they
had
better gut microbic gene expression, and that may explain better cardiovascular health, et cetera, down the line.
That's right. Yes. So the results were the walnut group. There was a type of bacteria that increased, and that specific type of bacteria helps to increase levels of an amino acid that is associated with cardiovascular health.
Homoarginine, right?
Yeah.
This is really interesting, isn't it?
I think it's really cool. I also think that it goes back to, sometimes we tend to pull out just the fat.
Yeah, we try to standardize it in a way, right?
Yeah. And I'm not saying that's not a good thing. We know ALA.
It's legitimate.
It's an omega-3. Omega-3 fatty acids may have a little bit of a beneficial I think they are now in the definition of prebiotics.
Yeah.
Up and coming definition. And I think they're beneficial, but don't forget the food.
Exactly. As a doctor of clinical nutrition, you always talk about food first.
Yeah.
And here, food won. The walnut won. All right. Let's go on to number 3. This is another kind of we're going to have to explain this one as well. But this is about salt and salt substitutes. Okay. In general, we know, I have a couple stats here.
Okay.
Right? Americans consume, on average, 3,400 milligrams. of sodium every single day. That's 50% higher than what's recommended. That's a lot.
Yes.
We like our salt. Right?
We do.
We do. And it's not surprising, 4 out of 10 Americans have high blood pressure. I'm not even, there's other stats and stuff like that. It really hits the African American population hard, right? There's 6 out of 10 with blood pressure issues probably related to salt intake. So what is the FDA? So we have that background.
And one more stat for that. Most of the sodium consumed in the diet comes from processed, packaged, prepared foods, not from salt people add to their food when they're cooking or eating.
Yeah, it's kind of like, we talk about added sugars. People don't realize that there's added salts to certain foods. Because my dad would say, my dad would salt a salt stick. He salted.
Dad.
He was the type of guy who would piss off like chefs and stuff or people that love to cook because he would salt the food before he even tasted it.
Yeah.
It was a knee-jerk reaction for him. Put salt.
Well, that's because most times the food needs a little salt. He's learned from experience.
Most of the time. But I guess the point I'm making is some people might say, I've cut out my salt. I'm not adding salt to anything, but they're eating a packaged meat or something.
So very true. And one thing that the FDA, kind of reading through all of this, showed that there are foods that require salt. When you talk about processed foods, packaged foods.
Ketchup. Remember, we found that out. Ketchup is one of these foods that salt is a required ingredient to make it.
It's in order for that food to be called ketchup, it has to contain salt.
Certain breads too, right?
These are what's called foods where there are standards of identity that's involved with the definition of that food.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a prescribed method of production or formulation in order for that food to be called whatever.
It's kind of like if you want to brew beer, you have to use yeast. I mean, you're not going to brew any beer if you're not using yeast, right? So yeast is a required ingredient. Well, guess what? Salt is a required ingredient in making some of these things. Now, I continue.
That's the background,
That's the background. So the FDA now, they released this when? When did they make this?
This was March 24th, I believe.
Of this year or last year?
Of this year.
Of this year. The FDA, let's see if I get this right.
Okay.
Right? The FDA basically said, well, you are now allowed, wherever salt's required in those specific foods you're making, like ketchup, right? You are now allowed to use salt substitutes to help curtail the amount of sodium people are getting every day.
That's it, Dr. Mike. That's
Nailed
the
it.
update. And I think it's an important update. It aligns with the goals of the FDA. They have a goal to reduce the sodium in our processed foods. It is a current strategy. Now they've notified industry, hey, we need to get this down by 12% over the next 2.5 years.
In processed foods.
Right. So they're working with industry to say, hey, this is one strategy.
Yeah, it's good.
You can now add salt substitutes.
And they're doing this because they realized, oh, wait, we keep telling people don't shake your salt shaker so much. Go to things like Dash and these other like salt substitutes you can buy which is still good, right? Yeah. That's still good. But that's not where we were getting most of our salt from.
That's right.
It was from processed food. So this is really interesting. I tried a salt sub. What was that? It was made out of seaweed.
Oh, yes, and you gave it to me because you didn't like it.
What was it called? Like green salt or something like that?
Green salt.
I was excited about it. I thought, hey, this is a great way to, because apparently you can cook with it and do whatever you want with it. I thought it was disgusting.
I tried it.
Come on, be honest. It wasn't good, right?
It didn't go well with the kiddos.
Hey, and I actually did a review for this company, and I said, hey, great shot, good try. Because it didn't have the same texture.
Yeah.
And there was a little off seaweedy
well,
type flavor.
I'll tell you, growing up, my family used salt substitutes. My dad in my mom. That was just something that we had in our house. I didn't like it then.
You don't like
And now I'm married to a man who only wants to use salt substitutes in our home. It's like the one with the potassium chloride instead of sodium chloride. I can taste the difference. He can't taste the difference.
I could taste the difference.
But it's if you can't taste the difference, it's worth a try, Dr. Mike.
Yeah.
And those of you listening.
Maybe instead of just using it as a salt shaker, you can use that stuff in making bread or making your own sauces, that kind of stuff. Okay. All right, so those are the 3 N's.
Yeah.
Right? Pretty cool. Those are the things you want to do. And for that last one, at the end of the day, it's less sodium. That's living foreverish, right? All right, let's talk about what you don't want. Now, this is interesting. What I'm about to say makes sense. I'm going to say this, and people are going to be like, well, of course I don't want those things, right? But we want to talk about them because there's an interesting twist in their relationship, and that is dementia and low bone density. Now, the background, right, is we need a lot of backgrounds for these segments in this show today. The background is dementia patients often eventually develop things like osteoporosis, osteopenia, low bone density.
Yep.
And there's theories about why that happens. I don't know if we want to get into that, whatever. But let me just get it. There's a connection there. But now they're starting to say, wait a second. Is the dementia really coming first?
Right.
Is it the low bone density that is maybe another risk factor or a contributing marker in cognitive health?
Yes, and so to find out this answer, the researchers looked at a group that it's a popular study cohort, the Rotterdam cohort, and it's a large group of people.
It's huge, yeah.
And some of you listening may be a part of that group.
Yeah.
But this group at baseline between 2002, 2005, participants of that group underwent bone scans. So now the researcher said, hey, let's look at those bone scans from way back then.
Yeah.
And see
who has problems now.
Who has problems now?
Yeah,
who has
cool.
Who has dementia now? So there were a total over 3,651 persons with DEXA scans
from the past.
Right, and those people without dementia in the past.
Yeah, in the past. They had no dementia. They got scans. What did those scans say? Because they have dementia now, or some of them do.
Yes. Yeah. So during a median of 11 years follow-up, there were 688 developed incident dementia. So that was 688 out of that 3,600 or so people. Out of that 688 that developed dementia, 528 of the 688, lots of numbers, developed Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah. Okay. So so what does all that mean? It means that there now is a connection between low bone density first, right? Getting a scan 10 years, or if I were to get a scan right now, and I had low bone density, that might be a risk factor in 10, 20 years for dementia.
Right. It might be a predictor. Oftentimes you're trying to look at these predictive models and figure out what you can do. And so, yes, the participants with lower bone mineral density at the femoral neck were more likely to develop all-cause dementia.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. So what's out, if we stick with that theory, that premise right there, what's out is low bone density. And it's out for a lot of reasons, not just dementia. Because you don't want to fall and fracture something either when you get older, right? So low bone density is the out for living foreverish.
That's it, Dr.
How do you like that?
I think I like this episode.
This was good. I did. I liked it, and but I think we laid it out pretty clearly. So there you go. There's your ins and outs for living a long, strong, vibrant life. Dr. Crystal, thanks for joining me today. Don't forget, you go to liveforeverish.com, and we can do the
1-2 punch.
What you didn't do it.
Sorry.
There's the cameras for it. That was 3.
Oh.
It's 1, 2, boom.
And an extra one.
And an extra one. Yeah, because what we mean by that is you give your email and you join the family, right? And you get newsletters and stuff from our sponsor, Life Extension.
Yep.
A lot of other great reviews of studies and stuff like that. And then you can also subscribe to our podcast right there at liveforeverish.com. Plus, there's a bunch of other episodes you can listen to. Whatever you do, download them, like them, share them, and don't forget the 1-2 punch.
That's right.
Liveforeverish.com. I'm Dr. Mike. Thanks for listening.